Tom, we're all set.
I've got movers moving a safe into my basement, so I'm hearing this crashing and whatever. Obviously, I'm going to put on mute.
Okay, I think we have everybody here, correct? So I'm going to reconvene the meeting. And for those of you that are just joining us, we actually had an executive session at 5:30 this afternoon. So we are in the middle of the meeting, so to speak. You have not missed anything as far as public process is concerned. Like always, you are in a waiting room of sort. So if you would like to speak at general public comment or whenever there's an opportunity for the public to speak, please just raise your hand and I will see your hand and I will call on you when it's an appropriate time. If you're having any sort of technical difficulties or you're watching at YouTube and you want something read into the record, you can email us. It's towncouncil@scarboroughmaine.org. So again, it's towncouncil@scarboroughmaine.org. If you're watching YouTube and you're trying to make comments into YouTube, if they're enabled, we do not see YouTube comments. So if you would like to make a public comment, join us in Zoom or email us and I will read it to the public. With that being said, item number 4 is general public comments, and these are for things that are not on the agenda. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak about anything in general, again, not on the agenda. I'm going to wait one moment here. And I see none. So with that, item number 5 is the approval of the minutes from the May 19th, 2020 special town council meeting and the May 20th, 2020 special regular town council meeting. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Tody?
Councillor Cucci?
Yes.
Councillor Hayes?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisteen?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
It was unanimous. Thank you.
Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. Councillor Hamel?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to make an adjustment to the agenda. I propose that we move the town manager's report up to be a new item number 8 following the current agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, I will move the town manager's report to the front of the agenda, so to speak. Item number 7 is items to be signed. There are no items for me to sign currently. So we are now on to item number 10, which is the town manager's report. Tom, would you like to give us your report?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start off giving a budget update. The town's finance committee has been meeting diligently every Tuesday at 4. I believe yesterday completed our third review session, and we have 2 more scheduled looking forward. I'd like to give a quick recap as to what occurred last evening and then talk about maybe what things look like over the next several weeks. Last evening, I did present to the Finance Committee a series of additional recommended adjustments to the budget. These included both appropriation adjustments and also some revenue adjustments as well. And so the net effect of those recommendations produced a further downward adjustment of $421,472. I offer those up, I won't say freely, but I offer them up with the full understanding that the Finance Committee is very likely to accept those recommendations. Further, though I did not go into great detail, there's additional modeling that I've performed that looks at further cuts should the Finance Committee and Council see fit to go beyond my recommended adjustments. The effect of that, and I'll just kind of report what that means in where we are in the process toward as regards tax rate. The effect of that would bring us to just about a 1% increase in the tax rate. At this point, this does not include any additional modifications or adjustments to the school budget than was done at first reading. And so one of the things that we I think the Finance Committee has been talking about, and I know the Board of Education has been very clear in asking for, which is really clear guidance as to, what's the total amount of adjustment that's going to be expected of the Board of Education. And so in an effort to do that, I've had conversations with the Finance Chair, Mr. Hayes, and also the Town Council leadership, Chair and Vice Chair earlier today. And I would suggest that the Finance Committee use its time next Tuesday on June 9th at 4 o'clock. Again, that would be a normal Finance Committee budget review process, and have a full budget workshop for the full council to really have that conversation around what is the ending point? What is the target that we're looking for? That's a critical piece of information. I think there have been a number of conversations that I've been party to or heard of among counselors or collections of counselors, but it's important for you as a group to have that conversation and really identify for all involved what that final ending point is that you desire. And from there, I think we can be quite clear as to what the targets are to reach that goal. So that's something that seems to have gained some acceptance and interest on the part of finance leadership and council leadership. And I'd recommend we do that in the interest of time and really to identify these things sooner than later. Beyond that, the Finance Committee will have a final meeting that's scheduled for Tuesday, June 16. I would expect they'd spend their time formalizing and finalizing their final recommendation to the Town Council that would be considered in second reading. And I guess the final point I'd mention, we are on schedule for second reading to occur on June 17th. We do have additional time, and I think I've been quite clear right along that I encourage you to take that time if you think you need it. And given this schedule that I just kind of quickly laid out, I would recommend that you have a special meeting on June 24th for the express purpose of considering the budget in second reading. That would allow just additional time that I think we can all benefit from, and allow the Finance Committee's recommendation to be clear, and for all of you to have time to understand it and work with it and be in a position to make a good informed decision at second reading. Also, I'd like to just recap beaches. I'm shifting gears here. At this point, all of our municipal lots at Higgins Beach, Ferry Beach, and Herd Park are all open. We have been working under reduced capacity and in some cases full closure of those lots over the last couple of months. But as of today, all lots are fully open to full capacity. Starting this Friday, June 5th, we will be enforcing the paid parking on the 13 spaces on Bayview Avenue at Higgins Beach. We do have personnel that will report, so the meter will be operational, and again, we'll be starting enforcement then. And then on June 19th, we will have staff, parking lot attendants at each of our municipal lots, and bathrooms will be fully open and functional at that point as well. At this point, there are no use restrictions on beach activities. For a time, we had a active use only policy. But at this point, in coordination with Old Orchard Beach in particular, but other neighbors as well, we've removed any use restrictions. Of course, social distancing still applies, avoidance of large gatherings. At this point, that I believe that's 50 or more. And then, of course, good hygiene is always encouraged, probably challenging on the beach, but nonetheless, these are things that I think will be with us for some time. And so I think people understand that at this point. If social distancing is not, you're not able for whatever reason, certainly face coverings are recommended by CDC. In terms of enforcement, we are being honest that we don't have a full complement of staff to do active on the beach enforcement. We'll be looking for voluntary compliance. We'll be improving our signage and messaging around the expectations. And based on our experience over the last 8 weeks or so, there has been tremendous voluntary compliance. That in part is why we've been able to keep our beaches open throughout. That may change a bit as we get some summer visitors coming and going. And that's why I think signage and messaging is going to be very important. So this is a work in progress. but I'm very pleased with staff and our ability to be able to get back and keep our beaches open and usable by our residents and visitors this summer. A couple other points just to mention in passing. The South Portland Housing Authority, interestingly enough, is proposing an affordable housing project here in town. This is on a parcel behind the Town and Country Federal Credit Union office building, and also sort of behind Hannaford grocery store as well. It's called Jocelyn House. It's essentially 60 one-bedroom senior units. And again, they'll be affordable. This project did go before Planning Board this Monday and did receive their master plan approval. And they had to get that because part of the parcel will be a 30,000 square foot office building that's not to be proposed, but it's part of the master plan approval. They are seeking funding through our Affordable Workforce Housing Partnership Initiative program. These are the in lieu fees that we've collected over the years. This is a program that is kind of up and running. Your Housing Alliance serves as the initial gatekeeper in reviewing applications. And they are seeking dates later this month, perhaps, to get together as a group, probably virtually at this point, to begin just understanding the application and working toward a recommendation for your consideration. Remember, the council controls those funds, and so that action would be an action of the town council. But the Alliance will do all the review and vetting, and I expect to have a recommendation for your consideration. They also have expressed interest in an affordable housing TIF for the project. This comes really as no surprise. It's consistent with what we've seen with similar projects. This parcel does exist within the existing downtown district, TIF district. And so I believe the expectation is that we would not be creating a separate one or carving this out. It would be included within that. So that's a matter that I know has great interest on the part of council and also the public. I'll be working with council leadership to schedule a time for a workshop for you to understand the project and the multiple requests that are associated with it. And last thing, I know the council did receive an update from Karen Martin from SEDCO later on this afternoon as regards the outdoor services restrictions or loosening of restrictions that the council approved back on May 20th. This was in recognition of challenges for local businesses in getting reopened. And the challenges are ever more present now that in dining is not allowed. There was at the time an expectation that there will be some ability for in-house dining, but that has since been pushed back further with the date uncertain at this point. So I can tell you that our local businesses are very pleased to have an option for them to expand out into the outdoors. And at this point, we've approved 15 applications, and it includes retail establishments, predominantly restaurants, and then some fitness studios as well. And there's one application still pending. So I'd like to just read the restaurants and locations for folks to be aware that they're open for business. We have Mainly Tubs, Portland Pie, Bailey's Lobster Pound, The Clam Bake, Cowbell, Crisp, Dunstan Tap and Table, Texas Roadhouse, El Rayo Taqueria, Foley's Fitness, Garage Barbecue, O'Reilly's Cure, Stern Restaurant, The Maine Bagel, and None Such Brewing. The one that's pending is Maury on the Marsh. This is the old, forgive me, how can I forget the?
And John's.
Thank you, old Ann John's location. And you'll notice most of these folks are using outdoor tents to ensure, as I look out the window and see rain finally falling, these tents will allow them presumably to continue operating with varying weather conditions. So again, I congratulate the council for your receptivity to the idea and your swiftness in adopting it. And I believe these businesses certainly would agree with that. So I'm pleased with our administrative review process. I think we've been quite efficient in moving these applications through. And we fully expect that we'll probably modify as we all get some experience. And I encourage anyone else that has any interest in doing what they do in outdoor spaces around their business to come talk to us, and we'll work with you to find a way to make that happen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for questions.
Yeah, Tom, I have 3 clarifying questions, I think, real quick. And Jean Marie, I see you. I'll get to you. I'm going to work backwards. The CEA you referenced, it's fair to say that that's similar to the structure of Bessie Commons, correct? That's right across the
Yes.
street from Town Hall. Okay, it's affordable senior living. I just want to make sure that's clear.
It is, just if I could, the affordable housing projects actually are a different statute. These are not economic development projects. They are affordable housing. They have a separate statute, but yes, with Avesta Housing as an example, and Bessie Commons is the second.
Thank you. And the second one's a 2-part question, but you referenced that what you came up with, we've seen what you proposed as far as reductions are concerned in your budget. You said we're at a current 1% mill rate. So my 2 questions are, first, that 1% mill rate is coupled all in with the current tier 4 of the BOE. Is that a correct statement? Or what we passed at first reading might be a more correct statement?
I think that's a fairer way, yes. It includes what was accomplished at first reading and then these additional adjustment recommendations that I've put forward.
Okay, so first reading plus these reductions, we're at 1%.
Correct.
And then my second question to that is, I know that you had adjusted our revenue projections from revenue sharing down by 300,000. Does this 1% account for any other reductions in revenue, or are we still holding those revenues?
Now, last evening, I proposed a further reduction regarding excise tax of $150,000. And again, these are my recommendations. Finance Committee really didn't have much discussion, certainly did not accept them all. But to answer your question, I'm proposing a reduction of excise by $150,000. We were planning on some cell tower lease revenues that we've downgraded. And there were a number of community services related revenues that were modified in recognition of the fact that we're not going to run summer camp this summer, nor senior programming, at least till September 1st.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, my question has to do with absentee balloting and getting the budget numbers out there in time for absentee balloting. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying you're suggesting we could wait as long as June 24th?
Yes, Councillor, we almost never have the final number before Tody and her team are supplying ballots to voters.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check, because I know, I'm guessing, this is a question for Tody through the chair. Do we have an unusual amount of absentee ballot requests?
Right now we have over 1,200 absentee ballot requests that will be needed to fill. What will happen if we have to start issuing absentee ballots the 15th. And what we do, and we've done in the past, is we've included the school budget and we put an instruction sheet in the mailing that indicates the ballots cannot be returned until after the second reading of the budget. And people understand that. So we normally have a lot of influx with returns after the budget has been voted on.
Yeah, that's what I want to get out to the public. I just want the public to be sure that they understand that even though they may get an absentee ballot, that there's a process in place, because I think people would be thinking, oh my God, we don't even know what we're voting on, and when are we going to get the absentee ballots, and are they going to go back in time, and blah, blah, blah. So I can just see it now. So
Yeah,
I thought I'd ask.
That's not uncommon. It seems a bit out of character. It would be great to have a number in that question, but the question essentially says, do you approve the budget approved by the town council on June 24th, 2020? It does not include an actual dollar amount because we don't know it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I just had a question. I agree that having a full council workshop to discuss the moving budget target is a good idea. Were you planning to reschedule the community services presentation that was scheduled for next week, or have that as well?
We certainly could. The schedule is always held out a fifth finance review meeting on the 16th. We just didn't have anything programmed. So if it's the will of the committee, we can certainly build that agenda to include that. I would encourage you also to spend time that evening to finalize your final recommendation.
Okay.
Any more for Tom? Okay, thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. With that, we're on to order number 20040. It is a 6 p.m. public hearing on the proposed FY 2021 municipal school budgets as amended at first reading on May 6, 2020. So this is a public hearing, and I'm going to go into the attendees. And Miss Durgan, you are live.
Okay, I did not think I'd be first. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, so I just had a prepared statement that I wanted to read today. I'm a member of the school board and I live on Sequoia Lane in Scarborough. And this year I have attended most, if not all, of the town council meetings, in addition to the council finance meetings, the joint finance meetings, and the school board finance meetings. And the council goal at the first reading was to limit the mill rate increase to 2%. And I just want to be very clear that the school board and the town have met and actually exceeded that goal. Since then, I have heard a number of councilor comments advocating for a 0% budget increase. And although vague references have been made to, quote, unprecedented times, I haven't heard specific reasons as to why this is deemed the best path. And in fact, I have seen data shared that shows that even with a 2% increase to the mill rate, residents with homes valued under $350,000 would see no tax increase. I would argue that these unprecedented times are the moment to invest in our schools. Students depend on schools not only for learning, but also for socialization, structure, activities, and more. Parents depend on the schools and after-school activities to be able to effectively do their jobs. After this long period of distance learning and the stress of the pandemic, students will have more needs than ever before. We need to invest in meeting these needs. We already know that we need to invest over $400,000 just to adhere to the minimum CDC recommendations to keep our students safe. In addition, we should be considering investments to lower class sizes to further reduce risks to our students and staff. And just as important to the school day are the after-school sports clubs and other activities. We should invest in making sure these activities are available to our students. Studies have shown that participation in after-school activities is associated with decreased behavioral problems, improved social and communication skills, better relationships with peers and teachers, increased self-confidence, lower levels of depression and anxiety, decreased drug and alcohol use, reduction in juvenile crime, and improved feelings and attitudes towards themselves in school. Our town continues to see development, and despite the pandemic, our student population is growing rapidly. We have a responsibility to serve each of those students to the best of our ability. They always deserve a school system that recognizes, meets, and invests in their needs. But now, more than ever, they are counting on us to do all of that and more. So please take this into consideration when you decide on the school budget amount, and acknowledge that reductions required to meet a 0% increase in the mill rate will not allow for us to provide a safe, healthy, and responsive school environment for our students.
Thanks, Hillary.
Thanks, Paul.
Mrs. Hamel, you are up next.
Hello, I'm Susan Hamill, Bay Street in Pine Point. I don't want to pay 1 penny more in property taxes this year than I did last. And I want to experience the property tax relief that the increase in the homestead exemption was intended for. It was not created so that local governments could increase their residents' tax bills. Most everyone in this town has been affected in some way by the pandemic. Many of us have lost income, and we are facing uncertainty about the future, what the future will look like. The world today is not the world of 6 months ago. or a year ago or 2 years ago. It's not the same world that existed when most of the town's collective bargaining agreements were negotiated. Not the world that existed when the HR department created current salary schedules, cost of living and step increases, benefit copays. And it's not the world that existed when staffing and capital plans were created. I am asking our town council and Board of Ed to make some awfully tough decisions. But the mission of town government is not to serve town employees. It's to serve the taxpayers of Scarborough. The citizens we elected to guide the town and school management need to remember why we taxpayers voted for you, to protect our interests. Just like one town, one budget was a principle that guided the development of the budget in the past, I'd like to suggest that we're all in this together be something that we think about as we approach the development of this year's budget. It reflects that all of us, taxpayers, students, parents, employees, we're all experiencing the effects of the pandemic. Finally, we can pass the budget the hard way or the easy way. Put a budget together that results in a 0% tax and mill rate increase, and it's done the easy way. Anything higher, and it will surely be the hard way. Thank you, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Sue. Oops, I hope I didn't. The next person is Ms. Blaisdell. You are up.
Sarah Blaisdell, 5 Farmhouse Road. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yep.
I think it's fair to say that any resident in Scarborough wants to support the police, fire, paramedics, and wants to maintain top-rated schools. No Scarborough resident wants their property value to go down as a result of not properly funding these things. With the revaluation, my family's taxes went up 25%. With the pandemic came a 10% to my husband's salary. But guess what? I still support a modest tax increase of 1.5% and apparently now 1%. If I have to forgo a dinner out to cover that $30 to $60, my taxes may go up, so be it. Scarborough still has much lower taxes than surrounding towns, and we need to make sure our town stays properly funded. Allowing a 0% increase will place Scarborough in a permanent hole that will never be filled without a large tax increase in the future.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Are there any others? I will pause for a moment or two, just in case anybody would like to speak. Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to resolution number 20001. It's an act on the request to approve resolution 20001, calling for collaboration on the FY 2021 budget solutions. This is sponsored by myself and Councillor Gleistein. Councillor Gleistein, I'll let you give the introduction, and you're on mute. Just Councillor Gleistein, can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, that took me a second to unmute.
Would you like to introduce us?
Yes, so
Okay.
I've co-sponsored a resolution with Councillor Johnson about these financially challenging times. Well, what do we mean by this? We've heard a lot of things thrown around, 0%, these are tough times, et cetera. So I thought I would try to break this down a little bit. We fund our budget through 3 major sources: state funding, property tax, and excise taxes and fees. And unfortunately, in these extraordinary times, all 3 of these sources are at risk this year. Before the pandemic, we were expecting about $7.7 million in state funding for school and town for FY21. But the challenge is not just for FY21. The revenue impacts also apply to FY20 because the state has been largely shut down since mid-March and continues to lose revenue from income tax, sales tax, restaurant and leisure taxes, and other sources. In March, the state had a $240 million shortfall, although a large percentage of that was related to delayed income tax filing. So the date that we can delay our income tax filing. And so the state shared revenue with the municipalities that they have not actually collected. So that's good news for us, but one wonders how long can the state share revenues that they haven't collected? In March, if you started to look at some of the indicators that are happening, there was a sales tax shortfall of $16 million over what was projected for the state. And actually, that was just a portion of the shutdown. The governor shut down. There was probably about 2 or 3 weeks, a couple of weeks in March where we had normal times before the shutdown. Maybe not normal, but mostly normal. So as Representative Drew Gatine of Westbrook said, we still need to see a lot of the numbers roll in, but he expects the revenue drop even for 2020, April, May, and June to be very bad. So why does this matter for Scarborough? Well, we as a town have taken extraordinary measures to save money in FY20 to use towards the FY21 budget. The school has also done this. If you're not familiar with these, please give a counselor a call or a school board member a call, because I personally am very proud of all of the actions, honestly at great cost, that our town has taken in order to pass forward savings to FY21 to get to some of these target goals. But if we experience revenue sharing shortfalls for May and June, then that may impact some of the savings that we were planning to apply to FY21. And then as the Sun Journal reports, the dire picture is more likely to play out in 2021 when tax revenue from personal and corporate income earned in 2020 is likely to drop. But that being said, the big picture is truly still not clear, including the impact of the stimulus money, the federal unemployment stimulus money that many people have received, the resiliencies of our businesses and the loans they've received, and any federal aid that will be available to states and potentially localities, which has not materialized yet. We've also had some good news on excise taxes for FY20 since the town hall reopened. People have been renewing their car tags and buying new tags. So we're currently in the process of analyzing what we think the probably recession type economy in FY21 will do to excise taxes, which is one of our big category. And the town manager mentioned some reductions we're seeing there. So in addition to state and excise tax, one of the big questions is also, when September comes, will people be able to make their property tax payments? That's a major unknown, whether people may have to delay or pay in part their property tax payments, which will impact our cash flow and mean that we might have to go after reserve money. Currently, the unemployment stands at 9.7% in Scarborough and 11% in the area overall. So that's an overview of our revenue concerns for both FY20 and FY21. What are our major budget drivers? There are things that we have to pay no matter what. We have to pay our county assessment, which is over $3 million for FY21, in part because we've been growing as a town. We have to pay legal obligations we've made in the form of what we call credit enhancements or tax rebates to private parties that have supported growth and economic development in Scarborough. This year, that's about $1.2 million. We have to pay our creditors. That's the money that we've borrowed to invest in ourselves, public safety buildings, new schools, equipment, all of the things that we need. This year, that total comes to about $11.8 million. So all of those things really have to be paid by the taxpayers right up front. The rest of the budget is where we determine how much taxpayers must fund. And these are really the very essence of why we exist as a town. These are funding our schools, our programs, our projects, and our services. And there's three major drivers to these. There's our employees, our capital, and our operating expenditures. And these are things, of course, like buses, snow plows, software, utilities, and everything else it takes to run a town and a school. But of all the expenditures we make, our employees are most important, most vital, and the largest part of our operating budget. We are here tonight with a resolution, and Chairman Johnson and I who will read it, to ask our employees for their assistance to help us through these budget uncertain times.
Thank you, Councilor Gleitstein. With that, I'm going to put it on the screen. Can everybody see the screen, I assume? Yes. The resolution has several whereas clauses, which Councilor Gleitstein just did a perfect job of teeing up. So be it resolved by the council of the town of Scarborough, Maine, in town council assembled, that whereas the WHO has declared a worldwide outbreak of COVID-19 novel coronavirus a pandemic, and the governor of Maine has proclaimed that the COVID-19 is highly infectious agent that poses an imminent threat of substantial harm on our citizens, and authorized the use of emergency powers, including business closures, safer at home orders, and ongoing restrictions that are impacting state and local economies in order to expand and expedite the state's response to the serious health and safety risk of the highly contagious COVID-19. And whereas the unemployment rate stands at historical levels at the beginning of May, with Scarborough at 9.7%, Cumberland County at 11%, Maine at 10.6%, and the United States at 14.7%. Whereas expenses for the COVID-19 measures needed to safely open schools are largely unknown at this time, but are expected to far exceed the relief funding. And whereas any potential reductions in state revenues from municipal and school funding that would impact Scarborough's FY21 budget are unknown at this time. And whereas our economic driven municipal revenues such as excise tax, fees, building permits are unknown moving into the future. And whereas many surrounding businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities have laid off, furloughed, reduced pay and benefits, and removed future pay raises for employees. And whereas the interventions implemented for COVID-19 have caused economic hardship for many Scarborough residents and may continue into the future should further interventions be required. And whereas Scarborough employees provide outstanding services, education, administration, and programming and are unquestionably the most valuable resource of town government. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town council call on staff and administrators of Scarborough and Scarborough Public Schools to come to the table with their respective elected officials to find budget solutions that balance the needs of all residents, taxpayers, students, and employees under these extraordinary circumstances. And with that, I will encourage my fellow councilors to add their own individual commentary of this before we actually vote on it. But I believe I still need a motion on the table before we do so.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And I believe I'm just going to go around, assuming everybody would like to speak. So Councilor Caterina, would you like to lead it off?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, I support this resolution and hope that we can collectively as a community work together to keep the budget in line. Now, I know with the town manager's additional reductions, we all heard the 1%. That's on top of, that's building upon the first reading acceptance, I think of about 1.87 or something on the first, when the school board had brought forward their reduced budget. The only concern I have is in that reduced budget brought by the school board, there were reductions of positions. And nobody likes to see that. And I don't like to see the schools decimated. I definitely agree with the first two callers. I definitely support the schools. But part of this budget process includes a significant amount of money to support pay raises by collective bargaining units that were done before COVID. Okay, so this was all done before COVID. Now you've heard our town manager, we've actually got concessions from the municipal side, collective bargaining units. They've actually stepped forward and gave concessions to help us reduce our budget. So I would really hope in order to maybe gain some of those positions back that were cut for the first reading, that the school folks could do the same thing. Not asking for much. I find it hard to support a budget that also includes money to support pay raises in the time of there's almost 1,000 Scarborough residents out of work right now. You know, our unemployment rate's over 9%. So again, I think if we all chip in as a community, whether we live and work here, I think we can get this done with little impact and damage to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Hayes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much to add. I mean, I think it was really well framed and really well said and kind of put forward. I think the only thing I'd offer is, I've heard a lot of people say, well, what's the concern? And I guess, if anything keeps me up at night, and I think Councilor Lacing did a great job. These are, and I think one of the public speakers tonight, Susan Hamel, did a great job of saying, these are not normal times. There's a new normal coming. If you just look at the headlines of this last week, what's happening all over our cities across the country. But I think Councilor Lacing did a great job of saying our biggest risk is we just don't know what's going to happen with the state budget. We don't know how the state's going to deal with, I mean, it started off by being Moody's said the state might be impacted $1 billion in a year's time. Governor Mills put out at one point, she thought it might be $3 billion. She's now talking about the state might be impacted by $7 billion. So this isn't just, a month from now, things are going to return. I think part of the reason we sit in the chairs that we do is a financial sort of stewardship. And I look at this as being, if you go back in time to the Great Depression, you go back in time to the Spanish flu, you go back in time historically, this is not going to be a 1 or 2 month recovery. This is going to be a multi-year recovery before we come back. And I think that is what's driving me anyway, in being, we just need to be really aware of that. And we can talk about a 1% budget or a 2% budget or a 3% budget, but there are going to be things we have not anticipated that is going to impact us. So I think this is a time to not only look in the short term, but we're going to be having really tough budget conversations for at least the next 2 cycles, if not 3. So I really encourage people to, really think about the impact. We are just starting, it's like the tip of the iceberg. We are just starting to see the impact of the virus ripple through our economy. If you, every day you pick up the paper, there's more business closures and other things. I run a small business. We're really struggling. And I think everybody that is working for an organization, be it nonprofit, they're going to be, my wife is on 2 nonprofit boards, and they're probably not going to survive. This is unusual times, and we really need to do what we think is in the best interest in the short term and the long term. So I think this is well said. I think the prior speaker, we're all in this together. It's one town, one budget. We're all being impacted, and we all need to share in how do we navigate going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Councilor Hamel?
Thank you. I support this resolution. I think, like many resolutions, it's high level. We'd like to be very specific in terms of the direction that we'd like to give to fellow leaders and stakeholders in this process. And for a variety of reasons, we can't do that. Not appropriate to do that. We can't do that. But we kind of know, I think we've been setting by example as a municipal part of the town budget, what can be done and what must be done. And I think others have spoken very eloquently to that. Ken Johnson described it very well, I thought. So the hope of this, the promise of it, is that we'll all be sharing in the sacrifice in some fashion. And now it just comes down to leadership. It comes down to leadership and setting an example and following through and making tough decisions. I think what's shaping up is that we have a budget that's trending down, still not there yet, I believe, in terms of a place where it would have support from both sides. I think ultimately we may not, we'll still have pockets of the town that will that will not like either one. But our job is to try to find the middle ground. I think we've done an outstanding job of that so far and gone farther and faster in much tougher times than we ever have in the past. So, but our work is not done. We got to follow through on this, and we need everybody to do their part, and we need our counterparts on the school side of the house to do what they can and to do what they must. And I think we've done everything possible to try to provide a pathway and to be pathfinders for that. And hopefully they can join us and we'll follow. But I support this, and thanks to everybody for their work, and to Betsy's fine job in crafting it and wordsmithing it, which is a completely thankless job. Thank you.
Councilor Gleisteen?
Yeah, so this year in particular, I think the budget process, maybe it's always a little bit mysterious when people are popping in and out of it, but this year, I don't think we need to sugarcoat it. It's been a tough year. We started out at one point, we immediately resolved that. We're modeling different things. And so we've made it tough for ourselves. We've made it tough for the staff. We've made it tough for the school board. So in that sense, I hope people can understand, with a little bit of, what I shared at the beginning of what all these moving factors are. 0% does not necessarily mean 0% school budget. It might mean, more cuts on the town side, less cuts on the school side, et cetera. So the devils are in the detail. And I talk about the budget process because one thing that's really important to know is a lot of what you've seen and heard is what the administration has been presenting in both school and town to the elected officials. They've done a fabulous job. And of course, they talk in depth with staff. They talk in depth with their leadership teams to figure out where are the right and the best places to make reductions. But it's important to know that the final reductions are going to be made by your elected officials on both the school board side and on the town side. We end up looking at the final spending and we say, yes, fund that. No, don't fund that. That is probably the most critical aspect of what your elected official does when it comes to spending. And so I think it's been kind of said, but what we're really asking for here is, what will be funded and what can we save if we share the sacrifice? Can we save some positions? Can we save some extracurricular activities? Can we save some community services? Can we save some things on the town side? Per diem fire hours. I mean, we're talking some serious things here. So we're asking everyone to talk with us. If you're not comfortable talking with your administration, reach out directly to folks on your respective elected official board. And let's see how we can fund within the bottom line a program that works for all of us.
Thank you. Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, thanks. I also support this, not necessarily for the same reasons as everybody else, but I think it's directionally correct and accurate and appropriate. We are facing a lot of uncertainty going into next year. So there's a lot of unknowns in the budget process that we're trying to make room for, but we can't really do. So if I had to wordsmith, I probably would have said, we're calling on all staff and administrators to help us find solutions, not necessarily just budget solutions, but solutions, because we're probably going to have to do some things differently next year. And we don't know, we don't have great clarity on how things might change, but I think that's where, from the ground up, staff can really play a role in pointing out, what, we don't need to do it like this. We might be able to accommodate or provide the same service or benefit in a new or different way that's maybe more efficient. So I do support it, and thank you for bringing it forward, Councilor Gleisteen.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been a little frustrated with lately is, this budget conversation has been in terms of numbers, 0%, 1.5%. And to me, the objective should be, we're trying to spend the least amount of money doing the least amount of harm. Like, we can all agree on that. That's what we're trying to do. It shouldn't matter where it ends up. We should be comfortable that we're spending the least amount of money with the least amount of harm. And, I'm going to get personal really quick. I'm a teacher. I'm a full-time teacher. I make $49,000 a year at Cheverus High School. I get a $1,600 a year stipend. I'm the science department head. I bring home $51,000 a year. My house was valued at $278,000 before the reval. It is now valued at $385,000. That's a 39% increase in the value of my house. I'm at 78 Mitchell Hill Road. Anybody on here, feel free to look up my card. We have a really good interactive system that we used to not have. To me, right now, this current discussion we're having, it has two parts to it. the teachers at Scarborough High School and Scarborough School System, excuse me, you guys need to come to the table and you need to do what's right and you need to accept a COLA reduction. I'm going to say it. You need to do it. I have received countless emails telling me that I am a bad person, which I signed up for this, I deserve it. But let's put your money where your mouth is, because we need to do the least amount of harm. And the people that are pounding the 0% drum, you don't know why you're pounding that yet. The appropriate analysis is, are we spending the least amount of money for the least amount of harm? It's not about a number. So, Board of Education, I'm calling on you directly right now, ratify the contract. If you want to push people like me, you want to push others that really want to try to come solution to going the wrong direction, then hold firm on your COLA, because that sends a very strong signal to me where your priorities are. And that's strong, but if I had to write this resolution, that's what it would have said. So I think I get the last word with that. So I'm going to move on. And now we're on to order number 20029. It is the second reading on the proposed amendments on chapter, we're voting on it. I'm sorry. Would you like to call the vote, Tony?
Yes, please. Counselor Cucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes? Yes. Counselor Hayes? Okay. Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes, and I would ditto Mr. Johnson's comment.
Okay. Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Okay. Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Order number 20029, second reading on the proposed amendments to chapter 405, the Town of Scarborough zoning ordinance, section 7HB, historic preservation. Councilor Katarina, do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Is on both historic preservation and ordinance. This is just to clean up the ordinance regarding historic properties. It's been before us a couple times, so shouldn't be any issues. It's just making sure that our list is in line with what actually exists out there. So.
Okay, good. Is there any public comment on this? Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
And discussion? Tony, you want to call it?
Yes. Counselor Cucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
It was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now on to order number 20030. It's the second reading on proposed amendments to chapter 405C, the Town of Scarborough Shoreland zoning ordinance. I believe we'll have some amendments offered up.
Yep.
But before we do, is there any public comment? There is not. So with that being said, is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Second, and I guess for discussion, Jean Marie, I think I'm just going to shoot over to you because you have some amendments. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have two amendments. One I was asked to present from the planning department, so I'll go to that one. Let's see, move approval to amend the main motion to include language to section 15.G.3 relating to bridges and culverts to read as follows. G, roads and driveways. 3, bridges and culverts must be installed and maintained to provide an opening sufficient in size and structure to accommodate 100-year frequency water flows and a cross-sectional area at least equal to 1.2 times the cross-sectional area of the river, stream, or tributary stream channel. However, in watersheds with an approved watershed management plan, bridge and culvert sizing shall be determined using the guidance within those detailed plans or the standard provided above, whichever maintains the greater opening. That's
Easy enough. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion on the amendment only. Cody, you want to call it?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
And the second amendment, Counselor Caterina?
Yeah, and this amendment came about because we got emails from some folks at Higgins Beach, and I also know potentially of a couple other people who may have been affected. All this does is state in section 4, and it makes an effective date for the ordinance. Rather than have the ordinance start tomorrow, move it forward to October 1st. I had Jay and Brian discuss this with our attorney, Phil Saucer, and he saw no issue with it. My concern originally had to do with just to make sure we aren't doing something we shouldn't be doing, because this whole piece that we're voting on tonight has to do with bringing our ordinances into alignment with the Maine DEP and federal environmental protection standards. So with that being said, section 4 will be amended. The effective date of this ordinance is, and I would insert here, October 1st, 2020, at which point the town shall submit the ordinance to the, and then we're striking a section here, up to Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection as provided in 38 MRSA subsection 438A3. Then we're striking on the effective date of this ordinance up to repealed. So in essence, what we're doing is just establishing a date certain.
And what's the advantage of moving the date out? I'm just trying to, is that?
Well, because people who are in process right now, if
Okay.
they haven't pulled the permit and we say, oh, this goes into effect tonight at midnight, then they may have to start all over or redo things. So we're just giving them enough time, get it done, pull the permits, and let's move on this. Tom, did you have anything to add, or?
Jean Marie, can I get a second before we discuss
Oh,
it?
absolutely, sorry.
It's okay.
Second.
Okay, thanks, guys. Sorry. Discussion, or actually, Tom, did you have anything to add? I'm sorry.
Staff is really ambivalent. I think it's always helpful if there's to add clarity in terms of the effective date. And Counselor, you're quite right. Staff has received some comment from folks that are kind of in process and it have been for some time. And so I think this seems like a reasonable accommodation. Staff has no issues with it.
Okay. Discussions on the amendment? Tony?
I just had a quick question. Is this
Oh, sorry.
something, I mean, we have done this before, right? We did delay the implementation of the marijuana so that we could get the forms together and things like that. This is, this has been done before. It's not an unusual request, I guess.
Your charter, unless you specify otherwise, your charter has an automatic effective date. So this is something you've done on occasion. So it's not out of the ordinary.
Great, thank you.
Counselor Pucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes,
Counselor Katerina,
Yes,
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes,
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
And we're back to the main motion as amended twice. Any discussion on that?
I had,
Counselor Geising, sorry.
I'm going to support this. It is quite complex, and I know a lot of people have worked on it, the town, the ordinance committee, the planning board. And so, I appreciate all that great work. We have heard from some shoreline residents who are, glad to see these changes made and going into effect. And it does get us in compliance with the state. There was just one area I did have some concern about, and that is that, the appeals process. I think we're, erring on the side, or not erring, but deciding to put in, a simplified appeals process. And I certainly understand that. But the state does allow us to do a different appeals process than we're putting in place. And I think, again, I'm going to support this tonight, but if you need to appeal now, you'll have to go, if you get turned down by the ZBA, directly to the Court of Appeals, which is quite an expensive process. And so I just think people should think about this, in the future of when you're a resident and you're looking at changes that might impact you with ordinances, which are basically our municipal laws. What is your right of appeal, and what will it cost you? I've seen I've seen a circumstance where a town did change this, and they changed this not for why we were doing it, but they changed it specifically really to kind of take away an avenue that residents would be able to, take forward their concerns about a major zoning change. So I don't feel there's anything nefarious here, anything like that. We made a choice. The planning board agreed to it. I'm just kind of putting it out there for people to think about this in the future, when especially related to ordinances and appeals process, because it's really important. But again, I commend the work done on all of this, and I am supporting this.
Thanks, Councilor Geisting. Anybody else? Cody?
That,
I think. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Counselor Clucci, sorry.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
It was unanimous. Thank you.
Order number 20031 is the second reading on the new small wireless facility licensing ordinance. I do usually kick this to public comment. I do want to make this clear. There is going to be a motion to move this back to ordinance committee. So if that satisfies you in the public and you are willing to meet us at ordinance committee, then I just wanted to say that right up front. But with that being said, is there any public comment before we move ahead? And so Jean Marie, I'll let you tee it up and make the motion, I think. Actually, I'm sorry. I guess we need I need a motion. I need to put it on the floor first, right? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, or I was going to do a quick explanation.
Okay, yeah. Okay, then tee it up.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
This is so-called 5G. This did go through ordinance this winter. It did get caught up in the COVID whatever maelstrom that was going on. So we did have the first reading and we had the public hearing. And I'll be honest with you, my original intent tonight was to pass this, to get this passed, because there is a cell phone company sniffing around out there looking to pull permits. And my concern was that we would be left with no coverage or no way to do anything with them, in particular charge fees. However, I did say at some point that I would make sure it went back to ordinance. I was going to do that either way, even if we passed it tonight. But in discussion with my fellow counselors, I will be making a motion to table this and move it to an ordinance meeting in July. So how's that for an intro to a bill?
So that was
an ordinance.
you put that on the floor. Is there a second?
Yes, so moved.
And discussion, Jean Marie, quickly. What is your discussion? Or
That was my discussion.
You need to make a motion to table it to ordinance, I believe. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm moving to, let me make sure I've got my wording right, and Tom, you can jump in if I don't have it quite right. I am moving to table and then move it back to the ordinance committee to return to council at such time as determined by the ordinance committee. Is that sufficient? Or for work on by the ordinance, so that works there, okay? So at such time as determined by the ordinance committee. I will add to it, it's not part of this, that the meeting will be July 9th, 2020 at 5 p.m. I've already scheduled a special time for this.
Thank you, Jean Marie. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's no discussion with the table, there's no discussion after this, or can
Right.
there? Yeah. So Tody, can you call a vote, please?
Counselor Cucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes,
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
It was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are going to take a 5-minute recess before we take on new business. So we will reconvene at 7:10.
Tony, you'll be interested to know there was an executive order just issued regarding state primary elections. So we'll have to spend some time understanding that.
It's a good thing things aren't changing by the second, right?
Right.
We'll handle it.
Yeah. Hey, guys, before I, actually, Tony or Tom, there was, Alicia Giftos had given me a public comment, and it was meant to be read in the record, and I didn't, so.
I'll get it.
I have it, Tom. I think I'll just read it before we start the new
Okay.
business. Yeah.
Okay.
It bothers me. I mean, it was sitting in my inbox. It was marked as, so.
Perhaps you could do that during council comments.
Well, that's what I was kind of just saying out loud for. I think I will do it during our comments, so, but. Okay, I believe, is Ms. Gleistein with us, or? Okay, all right, we are now back in session. We are on order number 20049. It is an act on the request to set the date, time, location of the school budget validation referendum election for Tuesday, July 14th at 7 a.m. at the Scarborough High School and Alumni Gym located at 11 Municipal Drive. Tony, is there anything you want to add to this, or?
This is just a standard procedure in order to post the warrant for notice to the public, the date and time of the elections, and also when we will do early processing of absentees.
And just for clarification, just for all of us, we all have to come in and sign this document, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so just for the 7 of us, we do need to stop by Tody's office and sign
Yes.
this document. Okay,
that's
and
correct.
what's the due date for that, Tody?
It would be nice if you could do it either Friday or Monday.
Okay.
I like to get them posted as soon as I can.
Yep. So, okay, is there a motion on the floor
So
Okay.
moved.
and a second?
Second.
Okay, with that discussion, Mr. Hayes, I think do you want to take it first, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to offer a motion, and Tony, you might need to help me, because instead of
Sure.
specific language, what we have is the Goldilocks question, which you've put in the sample ballot sort of
Yes.
format. So Tony, could you kind of explain that a little bit, how that works?
Let me get the warrant up here. So with the, it's an advisory question, it's not binding, but what it does is ask if the school budget adopted at the June 17th, or if it's the 24th, whenever the council decides, at the town council meeting, be either too high, acceptable, or too low. So a person could vote yes, acceptable, or it could, there you go. Or they could vote no, too high, or no, too low, or no, acceptable. So currently the budget, the ballot only has the top section, the question, the school budget validation question 1. That's what is on the budget on the ballot right now. So if you were to amend it to the advisory question, then it would appear as is presented by Chairman Johnson.
So just to be clear, I think for all of us to understand this, we are, Peter, oh boy, hold on.
What's that?
Good job.
Thank you. Well, I tried. I got a little too big for my britches on my Zoom game, I think. So Peter, you are suggesting, or you want to discuss, do we add this to the ballot?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the motion on the table to open it up for discussion. Yes.
Did we have a second on the motion?
Second.
May
Thank
the record reflect how professional this was all presented.
Nicely done.
It will live on YouTube forever, Paul.
Yes, it will. So with that, we're going to discuss that amendment. So we're going to discuss, do we support that language on the ballot? And Councilor Hamel, I believe you had your hand up first, so I will go.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm generally in favor of trying to keep ballots as brutally simple as possible. So originally, when we talked about Goldilocks, which, oh, by the way, is one of my favorite fables, I wasn't sure what it meant. I wasn't sure it was going to really add to our deliberation and for us to understand what may happen regardless of how the vote goes. I'm in favor of this. I think it's good, simple language that would allow us to understand what to do next in the event, the ballot may not pass. So, and also in the event if it passes. So I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Hayes?
Yeah, I think just a little bit of my thinking, and the reason I kind of brought it forth was really just to have the discussion and conversation. I've gotten a couple of emails. We've used it in the past. For me, I don't think we need it. I mean, obviously, if the budget passes, then it won't matter. But I think if the budget doesn't pass and it's no, I think we're going to want to know. I think it does provide some useful information about, or did people vote no because the budget was too high or too low? So it would help inform us. And I just want to add some clarity though, Tom, I think Tom and Tody, your concern is if we do this, it goes from being, you can't use the voting machines, it becomes a manual process, right? So
Correct.
it's a much more cumbersome process. It does slow it down. It does add cost.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to have the conversation. I think it could provide information in the event that we don't pass the budget the first time. And I think Tom has some real concerns about, because we're so far out in time, that, our goal should really be the first time, certainly should be the second time. If it goes out 3 times, we're in late September, Tom, probably.
Yeah, unfortunately, because we're starting a month later, I think that's a very distinct possibility if we have to go 3 times. Yes.
Councilor Caterina, just before your comment, Tody, just as a point of order or information, is this the drop dead? This is the time for us I just want to make sure this is the time we need to decide this.
No, actually, my deadline for ordering ballots was about a week ago, and they extended it. So they've already actually been ordered.
So if we do this, we're reordering ballots just to.
No, at this point, we would be too late to reorder ballots because they're dealing, this company is one that we have to use.
So would we, how would we put this on the ballot?
We'd have to all do paper. It would have to be a paper ballot like we've done in the past, and it would have to be hand counted.
We would print our own ballots.
That's correct.
Okay,
like we've done in the past.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Councilor Caterina?
I am not particularly in favor of this, and in part, I know before I got on the council, we had some Goldilocks questions, and there were a lot of spoiled ballots as a result of it, because people not only would feel it necessary to mark yes or no or whatever, but then they'd add a comment, and then their vote wouldn't count at all. And then I just recall when I was first on the council that the message was never particularly clear. And then given then what Tody's saying, that the ballots have already been printed, and it would take time, effort, and money to hand count all the ballots. I don't think it solves anything. I mean, people can vote yes or no. And we will certainly hear from the constituents as to why they voted the way they did. So I'm not in favor of it.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I guess I was somewhat neutral on this. I can see some pros and cons, but I'm leaning no because one, we need to get a budget passed. And I feel like if we put the Goldilocks question, it's going to divide us into a no too low camp and a no too high camp, when I kind of feel like we're coming in with a budget that's down the middle right now. And that's kind of been our goal. So I feel like it could unnecessarily have a risk not passing the budget at the first vote. So, but it could be meaningful information if it does not pass, but we're going to be in a tough situation then if it doesn't pass no matter what. We're going to have more clarity, I think, on some of the uncertain items in the budget that don't affect property taxes. And like I said, it's interesting information, but I'm leaning no.
Councilor, well, I guess anybody else have their hand raised? I'm sorry. Councilor Johnson?
I don't support this either. I feel that it has a tendency to have people vote instead of just accepting the budget, saying yes or no. They say, well, maybe we should try this again. And then in the middle of COVID, having people come out more than once, because I do believe your absentee ballot is only good for one time, right? Has to be. You can only mail it once.
Right.
Right? And what if they said, no, it's too high? We can't, or too low. We can't raise it. If we do our job well, we're going to come in with a budget that is lean and mean, serves the public, and shouldn't be any wiggle room one way or the other. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I don't support it.
Councilor Gleisteen?
Yeah, I think a lot of really good points have been made here. The reason I support it is mostly just from conversations with residents who feel very strongly about providing additional information, especially I think on those who want to spend more, because they feel like if they vote no, it's construed as that they're not in favor of the budget. And so, and that's too high. So when they're given the opportunity to say no, and the budget's too low, those folks that feel that way, I feel that they feel their voice is heard more completely. I think a lot of good points have been made here. I'm pretty much in John's camp, almost neutral, but leaning toward the positive just because I've just spoken with many residents who just really feel frustrated by just having to say yes or no, and that they feel this gives them a tool to tell the council some more information.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really tough one because I've gone back and forth. It's unfortunate that we don't know exactly where we end up, because I think I would advocate for this under certain circumstances and against this otherwise. I am worried that let's say we just freeze the budget process and put it where we are right now. I am worried that it would encourage a no vote. I mean, because if we do our job right, nobody's going to be happy with this budget. I mean, there really shouldn't be a whole lot of winners in this budget. This should be everybody begrudgingly voting yes. And so I'm worried that if we put this on here, it's going to be an instant vote no too high versus vote no too low campaign. And we've essentially all but sealed the fate to go into a second vote. So I think I'd support this on the faith that we could get to a place where I would vote against. I'm not in favor of this on the faith that if we do our job right, we don't have a ton of wiggle room, and that's a reality. And if we pit camps against each other, it's going to be too easy to go one way or the other. And then, so I don't know. This is hard. Like I said, I wish we did this a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, could we hear a little bit more from Peter on this, who offered the motion? What was his additional rationale on it? Because I know we've gone back and forth on it. I'm generally in favor of something that's going to help us. I don't know that we can predict, either way, whether it will help or hurt us definitively, but it does seem that more information is helpful. But Peter, could you help us with a little more rationale for something that you put forward if you're not really going to support it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, having, been through this, these things a few times, and there were some times we went, I think out of 11 tries at the budget at 1.7 had failed. I do know a couple times the information was useful, that when people say no, you really don't know why they're saying no. And in a couple cases, I know it did inform the council, and I agree with all the comments that have been made. But I do remember a couple distinct times where it didn't, when there was the no vote. And one time it was a no vote, and it was resoundingly, it was no too low. So we actually went back in the next round, actually increased the budget. So it did provide some guidance. If we get a no vote, and I totally understand where the chair is and saying if we do our jobs like we did last year, we're going to get to yes. But I think these are just different times. So if we do get a no vote, we're going to have to turn it around pretty quickly. And I think that information becomes helpful but I understand you could be setting up a dynamic that you just pit one side against the other. But that was my rationale and part of my rationale for putting it forward is I got several emails similar, it sounds like, to Councilor Gleisteen, where some people wanted it and some people don't want it. So I just thought the audience, our public, should have the benefit of this dialogue about why yes or no. That's helpful.
Yeah, that was Peter. Thank you. Councilor Gleisteen?
Yes, a point of information. This may be inappropriate, but is it possible if anybody wants from the public to offer a public comment on this? Okay, I guess we're kind of past that point, but did we?
Yes, and that's completely my fault. Yeah, actually, thank you for bringing that up. Yep. Is anybody in the audience like to speak to this? Thank you, Councilor Gleisteen. I have a couple. Mr. Hall, did you want to speak first, or?
I just wanted to offer a observation, having lived through, I think all of these. I believe there have been a total of 9 since 2008. My recollection, my personal opinion and observation is I do recall the instance that Councilor Hayes referred to, where it did provide some great clarity. My recollection is more times than not, it doesn't provide the clarity, and it in some cases can muddy the water further. And I would simply offer there may be ways to convene our community in the event of a no vote to solicit that input. So I just offer that up.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Seeley, you are up. You need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I would just like to follow up on Mr. Hall's comment there. I think the idea of having somebody come in, if there is a no vote, allowing kind of public comment at that point sounds like a great idea. Before he mentioned that, I was just going to give my general comment that I feel that more information is better in this situation. As somebody who would potentially say, raise my taxes more so that we can avoid draconian cuts here. A no vote would be hard for me to make because I think that I would just assume that you would think that I was saying it was too high. So I think it's a great idea. I would support having it. One comment would potentially be if you could add language to the page to say, any comments on this page will invalidate your vote. That might stop people from adding those comments, but that's it. Just those few comments, and thanks for discussing it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Addie. Tony, do you want to just address that? I don't think that would be legal, or I don't know.
No, it would not.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, on the ballot, it says not to deface the ballot. If you look at the very top, that would be considered defacing the ballot if you were to write something on it.
So Tony, quick question. I know this is putting you on the spot and you probably don't have this answer, but is there a significant uptick in invalid ballots when we have this on the?
No, we probably get a handful. When I say a handful, maybe a half a dozen or so where they've written on it and made comments, which defines that person. They can come in and say, that's my ballot. That's what I wrote.
Yeah.
So last election, I think we may have had a half a dozen. When we initially started, we had more, but when the public became aware that they weren't able to write on their ballot because it would invalidate it, we got less and less. So I want to say it was about a half a dozen, the last budget vote that we had.
Thank you. Councilor Hamble, did you and I raise our hand at the same time? Was that the same thing, or?
You asked my question precisely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Miss Hummage, I think. I'm sorry if I butchered your note. She's gone. I apologize. Mr. Kelman? Oh, she's back. I'll get to you, Nikki, after Mr. Kelman. Mr. Kelman, you are up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Just echoing the comments that were made before, I'm in support of the additional question to provide clarity. I know there's some concerns about whether that will split the vote or cause people to change their vote, but if you're for the budget or against the budget, you're going to say yes or no based on what you think. And I think the additional information is extremely valuable. And with the discussions of 0% or getting a low budget out there, I'm concerned that I would have to vote no, but that I would have no opportunity to provide additional input that I think the budget would be higher. And I don't want a no vote to be construed as let's go lower. So I think that providing that additional information is great. And although we could provide public comment afterwards, you're going to get a much, statistically better answer, I think, with this question than you would by relying on the few folks who come in and feel comfortable speaking in a public setting. So I'm in favor, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Tony, just another, I asked this, but I think I asked it wrong. If in theory, could we put this off 2 weeks to make this decision, since your ballots have already been ordered and we need to do paper ballots in-house anyways?
Well, we start issuing ballot absentees on June 15th. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Miss Humbage, I think. Again, I think I'm butchering your last name. And I'm going to. I need to promote you to panelist, Nikki, because you have an old version. So I think this will work. Can you hear us? Sounds like she's trying to talk, but. Nikki, you're up. Can you hear us? No? All right, I'm going to go to the next one, but I'm going to keep you in here and I'll try back in just a minute. Oh, there you are. I have to turn you. I have to turn your video off because it's our policy, and we cannot hear you.
Can he call in? Can he use a telephone number?
Yeah, he's not muted, so.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, no, we can hear you now.
We got you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
We talked about, so there would be extra cost associated with adding this to the ballot, because I would just, was curious, how much extra cost, and in light of everything we're trying to do to actually reduce costs and constrain the budget, I wonder if, the other means such as public comments and meetings, writing letters to the editor, sending emails, things like that would be sufficient to garner the necessary information on why people voted yes or no.
Tony, do you want to answer the extra cost? I believe it's around $5,000 if memory serves me. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And Ms. Bristol, you are up.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can always hear you. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to throw out a thought. I don't know if it would be something that would be possible, but if you wanted to ask the additional questions, would it be possible to do it as part of an exit poll at the high school, or perhaps an insert with an absentee ballot?
Yep. Thank you. I think we're probably going to end up discussing that a little bit after this, but yes. And CT, you are up. And can you just state your name, CT, for us, since we don't have it here? And Tony, I apologize. I need to start getting people's name and address. I apologize. CT, you are on mute. If you want to unmute yourself and state your name and your address. No? Okay. Any continuing discussion with this? Okay, so, yep, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I think someone else brought a good point up that if we decide to do it, at least on the ballot, it's a much more statistically valid way, doing exit polling interviews or other things, or, just having letters to the editor. We don't know if that one voice is speaking for 50 or not. So just from a statistical validity point of view, that's why the ballot, people can answer it, and we probably have a broader cross section than focus groups or whatever.
So I just to pose a question to the rest of you, because this is a difficult decision. What if it comes back 52-48? I mean, because in this town, it's probably a pretty likely outcome that we're looking at 52-48, 51-49. I believe the budget is passed by 87 votes at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Tom, or it was something under the 100. So I guess I'm concerned that if we do this, are we back to the point of, are we promoting that this thing gets shot down? And
If I could, Chairman Johnson, that's exactly the lack of clarity I refer to. My recollection is these votes are almost always very close. There's no landslides commonly, and the clarity really does not come forward because of that even split. And so I don't know if it's harmful, but I haven't found it terribly helpful.
Councilor Hamel?
Have we ever had a budget vote that went one way or that was voted down and then we raised the budget and it went up, and the other way around too, where it was, too high? And I know we've had them when it was too high and we reduced it, but what's the break on these typically?
My recollection is there was only one time that I recall that it was no too low, and by a very clear margin. And
Okay.
the council actually added a very modest amount and it passed the Senate. More times than not, it's no too high.
Okay.
And modifications are made.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
I mean, I don't want to presume anything, but I think in this situation that, actually, I can't even say that because it could easily be too high or too low in these circumstances. So, okay. I think I'm going to call the vote on the amendment that Mr. Hayes has brought forward, which is the Goldilocks provision.
Counselor Clucci,
No.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
No,
Counselor Johnson,
No,
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, we're back to the main motion as not amended. And any discussion on this? Councilor Glystein?
Yeah, point of information. Would this potentially be a time to read in BOE member Giftos, since it is budget related, instead of waiting all the way to the end? Just as
Yeah, you know what? I will gladly, no, but yes, just to get it off my mind, because I already feel poor because I already told her. But actually, you know what? Let's vote on this, Betsy, and then I'll sneak in our comment between the orders. That
Okay.
way, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Tony, would you like to call the vote?
Yes. Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
yes,
Counselor Johnson,
yes,
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And without objection, I'm going to quickly read one more public comment that I mistakenly, it's been in my inbox and I did not read it, in its regards to the budget. So just pause, see if there's any objection, because I am altering the agenda on the fly here. With that, I will read the comments. Dear members of the town council, my name is Alicia Giftos. I reside at 2 Saratoga Lane in Scarborough. Scarborough schools are subject to unique challenges this year, and without proper funding, the devastating impact to our schools will be felt for many years to come. This year, we are faced with student population growth, increased student behavioral, emotional, and programming needs, and of course, we are expecting unanticipated costs associated with safely educating our students during the unpredictable pandemic. These issues relate to the most basic legal and ethical requirements for our schools and community to provide our students with a free and appropriate public education. To meet this lowest threshold of a free and appropriate public education, you will need to make investments, not cuts, to our school this year. I certainly hope that as stewards of our town, you will not be satisfied with meeting the lowest threshold when it comes to education, safety, security, well-being of our most vulnerable population, our children. This means that even if you were to pass a neutral budget, there will need to be cuts to our school. A 2% goal, deep cuts. A 0% goal, devastating losses that will be years of investment to repair. Make no mistake, these decisions will come at a cost to our children and a cost to our taxpayers for many years. I know you are scared. I know you are feeling pressure. I know this probably feels like an impossible decision, that what seems like no good answer, but I'm asking you to stand up for what is right and what is necessary, and please fully fund our schools. Our children are relying on you. So I say that with my apologies to Ms. Giftos. She sent that to me hours ago. I promised I would read it to the public record and I forgot, so I apologize. Next is order number 20050, which is an act on the request to modify the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Scarborough and the Scarborough Police Benevolent Association. Tom?
Yes, I'm very pleased to present to the town council and the public the product of very fruitful discussions with our police union. We approached them about 5 or 6 weeks back at this point. In light of the circumstances, we didn't even know and still don't really know what we're getting into. This is an existing contract that's due to expire next June. So, these are truly voluntary concessions offered up by the police union. This amounts to effectively deferring the start of their cost of living increase from July 1st, which the contract provides for, and it would start at the first of the year, so January 1st. The rough calculation of savings of that is about $50,000.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on the floor?
So moved.
To approve.
Second? Anybody?
I think Peter had it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion. Councilor Hamel?
Yes, I've spent a lot of time working on this with staff and also with Liam Gallagher, Director of HR. I think this is a good gesture. I think this is consistent with direction we're trying to give, an example we're trying to set. So I'm in favor of this. I mean, there could and there may be a need to do more. So I think this may be a start where we have to, continue in that direction. But I think that it's not insignificant and is perhaps more helpful for us symbolically. But for those reasons, I will support this.
Councilor Hayes and then Councilor Katarina.
Yeah, I think, in kind of building on the theme of this evening and sort of the past years that, I think there's been some conversations about, these are different times that, I think some of the public speakers tonight, it's time for all of us to step up. And Tom, and I really appreciate the unions coming forward. And as I understand, it was voluntarily offered. And Tom, this isn't the first time, right? Haven't they done this other times when we've had real economic challenges? They've kind of stepped up to do their part of helping out. So I think, was it once before, Tom, or a couple times?
I can speak to my tenure here. It was done in fiscal year 2009. That was right at the front end of the recession period at that point. And again, it was voluntary. So there's a good track record of kind of sharing the sacrifice and getting to a place we need to get to.
And it feels to me like that's sort of leadership of our town employees, giving back to the community. And I think, as it was called out tonight, there's more opportunities for that to happen. And I hope they're leading by example and others will follow. So I will support it also. And I applaud them for coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Katarina.
Yes, I'd like to thank the police union for coming forward with this. These are the ladies and gentlemen who are on the front lines for us all the time. And I know they're taking a lot of heat right now, and not deservedly so, just because there are a few bad apples in the ranks. Generally speaking, most police officers are awesome, decent people. And I know the police officers in Scarborough are fabulous. I think I know just about every officer one way or the other, having met them or whatever. So I thank them very much for making this sacrifice for the good of the town at this point, and I will support this.
Councilor Calucci, and then Councilor Glyton.
Yeah, I just feel really fortunate to have a group of officers who step forward to offer something like this, given that they're on the front lines and really facing the worst of it. I think it was incredibly thoughtful and generous, and this was a raise that was, they were expecting in their paycheck next month. So I just want to say thank you.
Councilor Glyton?
Yeah, so, it's my understanding we have 8 bargaining units in town. So this is 2 of the bargaining units. And I think it's great that they have come forward. I think Chairman Johnson, you made some very powerful statements about some of the other, one in particular bargaining unit. But, I just hope that we see this as a time that we all come together. And I know our employees that are not covered by bargaining units, are already in the position that COLAs have been eliminated for a period of time. And it's not the be all end all, but it could take us to a place to where we could save some positions and save some programming. So I hope that we're able to build on what has been done here by police and dispatch. And I really appreciate those 2 units stepping forward.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, so the only thing I'd add is, first of all, I echo what everybody just said. Well said by everybody. And I just wanted to shout out to Liam Gallagher. I think he's one of the most professional, thorough, responsive people I've had the pleasure of working with professionally. So I think he's obviously not front and center all the time at these meetings, so to speak, but he just continuously impresses me through this process. I know this is not his motion, so to speak, but he's helped facilitate this for the bargaining units and for us. And I appreciate his work on it. And of course, I echo what all the counselors have said. Tody, you want to call the vote?
Councilor Cucci?
Yes.
Councilor Hayes? Councilor Glystein?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
It's been so long. I think it was only your first meeting I did that. Yes.
Thank you. It was unanimous.
Okay, order number 20051 is an act on the request to modify the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Scarborough and the Scarborough Public Safety Dispatchers Association, the IAFF Local 5174. Tom?
Yes, Chairman Johnson, similar to the police, the dispatch unit is in the 3rd year of a 3-year contract. Again, we'll be sitting down with them this time next year, renegotiating their contract. Similarly, they have voluntarily agreed to defer their COLA, which would have started July 1st, and it will now start January 1st, 2021. I would also note that the dispatch unit got back to us within the hour of us making the request, and we're particularly impressed with just the speed with which they understood the circumstance and responded. Very much appreciated. I should note the fiscal note associated with this savings is smaller. It's a unit of only 15 employees. They're lower wage employees as well. So it's about $15,280.
Thank you, sir. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Katarina?
Again, I thank the dispatch union for stepping forward in these difficult times. I think a lot of people don't understand the work that dispatchers do. They are the true front line, because they're the people who are answering the calls that come in when people are freaked out, something really bad's happening. They have to work really hard to get the information out. And while they're doing that, they're trying to dispatch the correct equipment and whatever. And they just do more than people realize. So I want to thank them for their work and thank them for the sacrifice that they're willing to make to the town.
Anybody else? Sorry, Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, I mean, I just echo sort of my first comments, and actually my comments are really made for both of these unions. But again, I just wanted to call out that again, tremendous leadership, and that's real partnering. And our thanks and appreciation for leading the way. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, great. With that, I'm going to ask Tony to call the vote.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes. With
you.
that item, sorry, Tony, thank you. Item number 8 is non-action items, which there are none. Number 9 is standing and special liaison reports. Anybody want to just raise their hand if they have any? That might be easier because Councilor Katerina first.
Yeah, very quickly. I'm on the Maine Municipal Legislative Policy Committee. We met last week via Zoom with Senator King's Chief of Staff in one meeting, and then we actually met directly with Representative Pingree. We're meeting tomorrow with Senator Collins' staff and perhaps the senator herself, I hope so. Our discussions were around funding, federal funding for local communities. And we were quite clear that any money that we see coming to municipalities, we would prefer to see it come directly, not have to be funneled through the states where possible. And we got very good feedback on that from both King's office and from Representative Pingree herself. I will say that they are working really hard. There's, I forget how many billions of dollars of COVID money that's sitting in the state treasury right now that's not moving anywhere because of there's so many strictures on how it can be used and not used. So the congressional delegations are working very hard to get that money loosened up, the requirements, so that it can get to where it needs to be, which is on the municipal level, to be quite honest with you. So just wanted to let you know that Maine Municipal, we are working really hard on that. But, the politics in Washington is pretty interesting. So stay tuned. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have a report they want to raise? No? Okay. So with that, I'm going to move to item number 11, which is councilor comments. And this one, I'll just go around the horn. Councilor Johnson.
Oh. Yeah, just like, reserve comments on the two municipal unions. I do really want to extend my appreciation and thanks. Really get a sense of community from those two groups. And this is not forever. This is, you can see, both these are a 6-month duration. It's allowing the town to save some money. And I really hope that we have some other collective bargaining groups jump on board and just help us get through this thing. This is not a done deal, not forever. We're looking for some concessions to help us out through these tough times. Thanks.
Councilor Hamel.
Yes, I support the comments that Councilor Johnson just made. I think we're doing a reasonable job of moving through a very aggressive agenda of issues that are pretty complicated and pretty controversial. So I think we are, doing a good job, all sides of the house, town and school, and other segments of the community in terms of trying to find a middle ground and then try to be respectful of one another. So I would appeal to everyone to keep that up. We do have a fair amount of control still locally, not only in terms of our own government, but also in terms of our own attitude and how we set a leadership example. So I want to, thank everybody for the efforts to do that. And also just a reminder that, we work very hard to squeeze stuff in, to do executive sessions, to make sure that we get aligned as a group of 7 people. And that has been proving very challenging because of the circumstances and the complexity of the issues we're dealing with. So I want to, thank everybody who works to make that happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Councilor Glystein.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd like to commend the town of Gorham and earlier Calais for taking a well thought out approach to balance the health and safety of residents with economic realities for the economic realities that are affecting residents and businesses. Gorham and Dallas have passed resolutions that support all businesses to open safely. Thankfully, we've had many businesses who have operated throughout the pandemic, and much has been learned that those businesses are willing to share. And I think that it's time to learn from that and to start letting our businesses really step up to the plate and operate safely. Gorham recognized that communities are unique and that businesses deserve individual and local solutions and regulations. And I just applaud their efforts there. And I hope that Scarborough may consider a similar resolution. The other thing I wanted to say is probably a little bit harder. And I probably won't say it too well, but we're witnessing some really tough and challenging times, especially in our cities and towns over a terrible incident that occurred in another state. And I think a lot of people are feeling very emotionally raw, and they're concerned about the future. And if I would like to be so audacious to say that I think probably the solution is here, and it's in front of us, and it's in local government. I think we've seen tonight with how people are able to come together and express their solutions to our budget crisis, but also to really express changes that they want to see in services that we provide. The public safety services everywhere are provided at the local level. And as residents and citizens, we have an obligation for oversight. In Scarborough, we're very fortunate. We have an outstanding, excellent police department, but I would challenge residents and citizens everywhere to get involved in your localities. Learn the details of how these programs work. Ask questions. Yes, folks are experts, and sometimes people get intimidated about asking questions, but it is our job as residents, and it's our job as elected officials to understand how things work and act as oversight for these programs that we fund. And it was funny, or not funny, haha, but I was thinking along these lines, and I go on the town Facebook page and I see Chief Moulton saying, I want to hear you, I want to listen. So the chief of police has offered to help you understand how these services work. I think we all need to understand it. I say this starts with us. It starts with local government. And thank you.
Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I appreciate a lot of those comments, Councilor Gleisten. As a small business owner in an industry that is being decimated by the virus, it's a whole range of emotions that you feel, right? You're angry because the rules change every minute. And I think what Gorham did, I originally latched onto, like, yeah, let's scream that you're killing us. And then I gave it a little more thought. And it's probably one of my proudest moments as counselor was last week or last meeting when we enacted an emergency ordinance that allowed some of our businesses to adapt to the situation that we find ourselves in, and to really give them a fighting chance of surviving. So that goes beyond just screaming. That actually put a law in place that is going to give some businesses who want to do the right thing and do things safely a chance to make it. So I wanted to shout out to town staff who is working right now understaffed because a number of employees are furloughed and on reduced hours at a time when there's a bunch of bent up demand coming through the door. And they're still coming up with ideas like this that can help the residents survive. So thank you.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I'm going to levy off from that too. I was disappointed to see the Gorham Town Council pass that resolution, in part because, I mean, I understand their thinking behind it perhaps, but it's, their resolution actually is meaningless in many ways because what they're saying they want to do, or they're telling businesses in Gorham to do, could be setting some of these businesses up to be in violation of state law. and what's going on right now. So I agree with Councilor Clucci that I like what we've been doing in Scarborough at this point, particularly that what we just did with that ordinance, you know, loosening up so that it assists these businesses, tourism related businesses who are getting nailed right now by circumstances beyond their control. That being said, I wanted to thank Chief Moulton for putting out his video as a person who has relatives of color. And I've experienced with my nephew in Chicago exactly some of what goes on with young Black men in particular, with some of their relationships with so-called authority figures or police. And I've experienced it firsthand with him, with them not knowing I was his white aunt, but that's another story. I could tell you the story all day about what went on. I am happy to see that this has become a topic that needs to be addressed right now. And I thought that Chief Moulton's video was great. And I agree with Councilor Gleisten. You know, we need to listen, we need to ask questions. You can't paint everybody in the world with the same brush. I think as a council, we try to do that as much as we can. So that being said, my last comment tonight is people should know where I am on this budget. I've made it pretty clear. I think that we need to find a middle ground with this budget, given the fact that there may be revenue issues with the state. Who knows what the feds will do? I'd hate to see us cut to the bone right away, right now, because then there's no place else to go, because our income is the property tax. And as I came up with that little, well, I did it on the back of a napkin, and Councilor Clucci was nice enough to put it into a format for me on an Excel format. In fact, even if we were to vote in the budget today, the way it is, most people in this town would get a reduction due to the homestead exemption, and very few people would be paying very much more. So again, let's keep talking, let's keep working. And yeah, these are tough times right now in many, many ways. We're at a historic juncture, but we will get through this. So thank you.
Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, I mean, good evening. I think I'll kind of build on some different themes. And I think, you know, there's sort of, we are in different times. What has been good, we've probably at this stage of the budget process, and I'm sure everyone else here has received more emails from constituents than we ever have about the budget. And I just encourage people that, you know, be civil and respectful. We really want your input and information. I think we've built on it a little bit tonight, but the old saying about it takes a village, what's really is helpful. Some of the emails we've been getting, people are pretty much in one camp or the other. What I think you've heard a little bit tonight, what we really need are people coming up with some solutions to help us. We talked about how, you know, some of the municipal unions have helped us, but we need people to come to the table and say, how can we work together? I can't remember if it was actually, I think it was Councilor Clucci that said kind of, we need to look at how we do stuff. Is there different ways we can do it? Can we have more community involvement? So we need your input. This is the most difficult budget I have seen in the 6 years I've been on the council, just because of all the uncertainty we've talked about. So keep talking to us. Bring us your suggestions and ideas. We'll listen. It's really, you know, I saw some things about people are upset because we're not responding to every single email, and it's tough. We're getting a lot. We've probably put more hours in as a town council in the last 2 months than a lot of other councils. So I think we're working. It's just really challenging, and looking for all your support and help and trying to find a way forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, to add to that, I think, Peter, as head of finance, has kind of spearheaded replying to people, but it is an overwhelming amount of emails. I can speak personally. I read every single one. And, there's times where I reply, I don't even know if it's, a lot of these are, I don't want to, at this point, our option is a form email back, right? Because that's all we really can do at this point. So it's not meant to be impersonal. It's our acknowledgement to say, hey, listen, we've read your email and we've heard you. My only thing, just to recap, because Tom mentioned at the top of the hour, and I should have said this in the committee reports, and for those of you that are still on, because there's still several people in the audience, I do want to reiterate that we did agree that Tuesday at 4 p.m. next week will be a full town council workshop instead of normal finance, because it is our goal to converge on a more articulated goal and to give a little more clarity on when we're going. So if you're in the audience, I just wanted to help us get that word out. Tuesday at 4 is a full town council workshop. And as a council reminder, there is an executive session Monday night after appointments and negotiations. I will put this all in email form, but I'm just saying it publicly as well. And so with that, Tody, I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Tody?
Thank you. Okay. Counselor Cucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a great night.
Thanks.